Sufism is a mystic tradition of Islam based on the pursuit of spiritual truth as it is gradually revealed to the heart and mind of the Sufi, that is, one who practices Sufism. While other branches of Islam generally focus on the external aspects of religion, Sufism is mainly focused on the direct perception of truth or God through mystic practices based on divine love. Sufi orders can be Shia Islam or Sunni Islam, both or neither. Joining me in studio today is Tina Petrova, who is not Muslim, but has been following the Sufi path since she had a mystical dream about Jalal-ud-Din Rumi, the founder of Sufi poetry, after which she produced a film titled Rumi Turning Ecstatic. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, perhaps we could start with the question of what does it mean to be a Sufi, and more explicitly, what does it mean to you to be a Sufi, and how did you reach that part of your journey?
I see the word Sufi as really being a philosophy rather than a religion. To me, Sufism embraces, it's all embracing the world's religions. One can be a Buddhist, one can be a Muslim, one can be a Christian. Sufism is really non-divisive and accepting of all the world's religions. I personally was born into a Roman Catholic family. I went to a Roman Catholic school taught by, my teachers were nuns. In my early high school years, I embraced Hinduism. I lived on ashrams. I studied yoga. Later on, I became a student of the Dalai Lama. I studied teachings of the medicine wheel teachings with the Native Americans. So by the time I had this tragic car accident in the California desert and Mevlana Jalaluddin Rumi appeared to me in a dream, it was actually a natural progression because it was really a message to me that all this singing is one song. All religions are from God. And so I took it as a sign that it was time in the world right now for us to, push aside our differences, to be more tolerant of one another. And so at this point, I really immersed myself in the reading of Sufi poetry and the study and research of Sufism.
It also strikes me that this universality has very much to do with this divine love that, we speak of in terms of Sufism. Now, we're fortunate enough today that you've brought a clip of your upcoming movie. Perhaps we'll go to that right now. Maybe you could even, once we're done, talk a bit about the clip and its context.
Yes, I will. Thank you.
There are moments in life that if we say yes, we become transformed.
Earth, water, air, and fire are dead to you and me, but alive in God's presence.
How could one small voice echo for 700 years?
Rumi says, read the book of your own life. That's the story. That's your sacred text.
How could a Sufi poet outsell Shakespeare for the last decade?
But it's literature inspired with the truth that goes right to the human heart.
He is the completely clear voice speaking to us when the human race needs that inspiration like oxygen.
I packed my bags overnight and set off on what was to become the pilgrimage of my life.
That was incredible.
Thank you. It really was incredible.
Now, one of the things that was mentioned there in the clip, but that you've also mentioned is this poetry, this Sufi poetry that I guess is at the root of Sufism. And you've been fortunate enough to bring a copy of some of the poetry. Perhaps you could recite one of those poems for us.
Yes, one thing I'd like to mention is that Sufi poetry was written as kind of a blueprint or a map for the journey on the way home to the beloved. Sufis have a very intimate connection with God, who they call the friend with a capital F, or the beloved, And so these poems really have teaching aspects to them. And can I read a few lines?
Yes, please do.
A chickpea leaps almost over the rim of the pot where it's being boiled. Why are you doing this to me? The cook knocks it down with a ladle. Don't you try to jump out. You think I'm torturing you. I'm giving you flavor, so you can mix with spices and rice and be the lovely vitality of a human being. Remember when you drank rain in the garden? That was for this.
Wow.
So So it's about the human condition. You know, we think we're these little chickpeas. We're trying to jump out of the pot. We're trying to be separate from God. And God is saying, let me flavor you. Let me season you. You're all part of the mix together. You're all drops in the great ocean. And before we can settle down, our lower animal nature needs to be tamed.
Now, it also strikes me that the contrast, let's say, between poetry and prose is that poetry is much more open to interpretation and sort of open to the seeker in terms of what they read in the poem. Do you find that this is true in terms of the Sufi path?
Yes. Many people use the books of Mevlana Jalaluddin Rumi and other great Sufi poets like Hafiz and Kabir, and they'll open the poetry as they would the Bible or the Quran and look for a gift for them. And they'll find that if they're troubled, they'll open a page and it will speak to them. This is the power of Sufi poetry, is there's something in it for everyone. And indeed, Mevlana Jalaluddin Rumi died in 1273, and he's outsold Shakespeare the past 2 decades in North America. So that really speaks to the human condition right now and the yearning to feel part of a whole and not to feel so separate and isolated.
And on that note, are there, let's say, groups or congregations of people who are Sufis who seek others in terms of sharing that pursuit and sharing that spiritual path?
Yes, absolutely. There's formal groups, like in northern Toronto, there's the Rafai order, the Jarahi Sufi order, and then there's also a non-traditional, more New Age version, the Dances of Universal Peace, and the Sufi Order of the West, which practice chants and universal dances and a commonality of all the world's religions and a sharing and a non-judging of where people are at in their spiritual path or their cultures or religious beliefs.
And would this manifest all around the world in terms of Sufi communities all over?
Absolutely. There are Sufi communities all over the world.
Now, you know, going back to your movie, what was it that, I mean, obviously it's one thing to embrace a new path and to embrace new teachings, but then to turn it into a movie to share with others, what was your motivation for that? Just in sharing your own joy?
I had no choice. The love I felt when I had this mystical vision of Jalaluddin Rumi was like falling deeply, deeply in love. And you know how you would never forsake a lover, like you would take a bullet for them, or, you know, you would just throw a child, like you would throw yourself in between your child and a car coming at them. Rumi just filled my heart with so much love and longing that even though it was a difficult process, I had to make this film, and I really didn't know why. It was really a had-to situation.
Wow. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a fascinating discussion about the Sufi path and the poetry that you've described. Certainly I'll look more to reading some of that poetry for myself. That was Tina Petrova, a Sufi and producer of the film Rumi Turning Ecstatic. Next on the program, Alcoholics Anonymous and the Spiritual Pursuit of Sobriety. That's coming up on 3D Dialogue.
Call the Rogers Television Viewer Response Line at 1-800-939-7787 or visit our website with your comments.